This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Aaron asks Joey about how we greet each other, and Joey asks Aaron about rediscovering sides of ourselves.
Woo! Oh, hi. It's me. It's what a Joey sounds like.
How pleasant. Hello. Hi, this is what a Joey sounds like. This is what an Aaron sounds like.
And this is what an executive producer and French chef Jess Vander sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
Yeah. You're like, oh wait, I had to find her. I had to.
No, I'm just gonna do
no
normal.
accents. Yep.
No.
Yep.
Let me get into my Jess.
Yes.
Hold on, putting my Jess on.
Yeah.
Yep, got it. There it is. Ooh, it fits perfect. Any housekeeping? Rate, review, subscribe. Check us out on YouTube. It's there if you or anyone you know has accessibility issues. It gets closed captioned automatically there, so we have it. And that's about it. Just keep living the dream. So no housekeeping with that. We can just get into it, Aaron.
Okay.
I am ready for your topic this week.
So when I chatted this, I had before the show, just for our listeners, we chat back and forth like, oh, I think I got this thing on my mind. And I chatted what we're going to talk about. And I was like, this requires an extra 2-page long email to Joey just to let him know that I am not attacking him. So I am caveating this right now that it is potentially spicy. There are generalities that might come forth that I need to be held accountable for. And I am just going to preface, this is a big topic now, right? This got really hefty.
Yeah, exactly. And now let's talk about boxers or briefs.
Yes, exactly. The answer is Matador Meggings. You're welcome. Free advertising. It's gotta happen. So the other day, I am watching RuPaul's Drag Race, as we all know that I do way too much.
Natch. That's all you do outside of be on this podcast.
Truly. And, there's just there's a lot of gay lingo that is born not on that show, but in the drag community. And there's just a little turn of phrase that's like, come on, something. It's just like, yes, do good things. Like, all right, hurrah, huzzah. And I was thinking about the contrast between this, come on, something, and other people in my life who are here saying, let's go. And what stood out to me is that both of them are saying the same thing, which is allons-y, let's make things happen. The French chef, it just happened. I'm sorry. I don't know.
No, I am the French chef.
You are the French chef.
At the beginning.
It's true.
Get off Jess's corner.
Get off.
We cannot have 2 out of 3 French chefs.
Never. And so in any case, my mind just goes into this big spiral about all the ways that we not just express ourselves in general, but even more specifically, those ways that we introduce ourselves to each other, the way that we say hello. And my question is, what are the hidden politics of hello?
I think in perfect Aaron faction, I think successfully avoided all the heat of your take because you didn't want. You're just like, have I got a hot take for you? And then all of a sudden you're like diplomatically circled around any of the heat, so people are like, that was a pretty tepid take. Where the reality is that you have some heat, and I think you need to bring the heat.
Okay. A, I want to have a tepid take corner. B, to make it hotter, I'll say that there is a very strong cohort of sports-oriented men. And this isn't about the hello. This is about this sort of moment in which you have these people who just start saying, let's go. And it's a very hollow phrase. There is there's nothing in it. But what's so baked into, Jess, there's a question here.
Is it let's go or is it let's go? Let's go.
It might be both. It might be.
In what context? Maybe
fair point.
That would be helpful to know.
Okay. So picture it. it is Sicily 1942. No, I'm just kidding. So we are.
That's a dark place.
That
to
is
be.
a really dark place, but you know what? Sophia Petrillo made it through. We all can. So, there are these. Imagine that there's a moment in which you're on a team at work and something good happens, and somebody says like, "All right, let's go." Like that's the reaction. And this is at any job. This is not a specific type of job, but this reaction of "let's go" oftentimes is like it's a stand-in phrase for like, I'm so proud of us, or that was so good, or something that takes a lot more words to throw down on paper. Mm-hmm. But also the actual phrase itself is like a command. It's like a really weird thing that it's like, I am now positioning myself in a like center of power by saying I want everybody else to do something, and that is for all of us to go. Which is also like the most like deep thing that you can ask someone to do. It's almost as like big as saying like, let's be, like, let's exist. Like it's very like, whoa, we are profound here. And yeah, there's a lot of other like vernacular that gets tossed around. I threw out like, hey boss, like calling people boss and like using that, even though it's colloquial, it's like almost like, I don't know, surreptitiously trying to express that there's like a power dynamic that is being expressed to minimize one person and make the other one feel a sense of like of importance, and that therefore they should like respond to that person's talk or speech, whatever it is that comes out behind that. And all of this is the stuff that swirls around in my mind while I'm watching Drag Race. And when I feel that at first that I felt that I didn't have the equivalent, and that maybe this was something that was only in one cohort of the population, but in fact, it's like, come on, XYZ is exactly as hollow and empty and not interrogative, like commanding, like, come on, like, where are we going? Why do you get to tell me where I'm going? So anyway, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I think I get you, because in the instance of like, hey boss, you're describing that in the context, I think, right, of like, they are not talking to their boss. It is the person in like who is presuming a boss like power seat talking to someone who is obviously not their boss. And that is like the situation you're describing, right? Like, but also, why would you say that unless you think you're the boss and now you're playing with this dynamic?
And specifically because it's in place of just saying, excuse me, or pardon me. And it's the complete opposite. If you say, well, it's not the opposite, it's maybe the exact same thing. You're saying, pardon me, you're literally saying, I'm sorry for my presence. Like, I haven't even said what I'm going to say. I'm just know that I've interrupted you by existing in front of you. So pardon me. Let me ask you a question. Which way is the perfunctorium? You know, like, that is the same thing as excuse me, but it's so much more dramatic, so much more straightforward, and also so much more like, I don't know, you're the boss and I'm not. You have to.
I think so. I didn't have all of the context of the way that you were thinking about it from our chat, but it feels like, so this is all, like armchair hypotheses and whatever. But thinking about it as you were going through it, my head went to this as like a very like primal primate thing that is happening on one aspect of the things that you're talking about, right? Like the sort of empty hellos, or like, hey boss, hey chief, like, whatever, those types of things. If you're going into a store and you're meeting someone, it is like a signal. It's the equivalent of like establishing like an environmental synchronization that like this is not a dangerous place by me saying like, hey chief, even though that particular hollow statement is sort of like idiosyncratic to locations or cultures or communities. It is like, we're good. Like you're welcome. It means nothing in like verbiage, but in the sort of like underlying context, it means like, there's no danger here, right? Like that's all it's meant to be signaling.
It's the linguistic version of a dog showing its belly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
so
like,
interesting.
Yeah, we don't have a problem.
Well, that's
Right.
that's what I would have thought. But like, I guess what I'm interested in, Aaron, is you bring this up because it feels like that is not how it reads, or like maybe there are certain phrases that rub you the wrong way. It doesn't feel like a belly rub situation.
I continue to try to stay in my tepid lake of tepid takes, and you keep on turning up the heat on me. No, you're totally right. I think that there's a that question of like, why does the real question should be, why does "let's go" as a statement of congratulations drive me nuts?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the question.
Those ones to me are independent of like whether like "let's go," like "let's fucking go," LFG, like whatever. Those
LFG.
things are.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I don't like that either, though. That is interesting.
Those to me are like emotional synchronization. They're attempts at emotional synchronization in my head. I haven't thought a lot about this until now, so I could be wrong. But it's like when you're doing those things, you're like projecting out a tone and seeing if the tone is being met, right? Like just like sort of like a ting on like a tuning fork, and it's like, are we here? Well, are we at "let's go," or are people not responding to "let's go"? Are we actually at like, I need a rest?
I wonder if there are two parts, Joey, right? Like the part that you're describing is tone as like energy level, like putting in, like trying to, acknowledge or meet the level that other people are at. But I also wonder if the thing that rubs me the wrong way, and maybe Aaron, this is the thing that you're trying to get at, is more like that. And I don't know how else to describe this, but like, forgive the nerdiness of like timbre, like the quality of that LFG is like bro-y. There's like a lot of bro energy. It's like not just high energy, but it's bro energy as a flavor.
And that is the decoding that I think is interesting, because like I've like went down a rabbit hole of trying to think. The only contexts that I really know it in are when I watch my brother-in-law watching sports. And if it's a basketball game, he is literally jumping out of the chair screaming, "Let's fucking go." And that's all. Like he's also a huge I've never met anyone who has this relationship to sport that like he does, and it's truly that. And I love him. He's like, he actually is like a sibling that I never knew that I had when I met him. So he's the best. But like in that context, it makes like, I hear a coach on a team telling the team, "let's go." And I feel like there's some folks who can tap into that feeling very, encouraging and exciting. As an ex-theater kid / person who played alone a lot, in general,
as an indoor kid
who liked the sciences, I never like that tone is actually the opposite of the thing that makes me feel safe or energized. It makes me feel like I'm not a part of the team, but it's like a language, like it's the signal that there's a whole language that I don't know and that I cannot traffic that is now here. And so like, and what the synchronization point though, I think is so interesting, because I know a lot of folks, perhaps like myself, who not in the same context, but in terms of hello, will say like, "Hey y'all." And it's a similar thing where y'all is like fundamentally like a democratizing statement. Yes, it's got like hints of just like, down home chill, like, this is not a "hello, dear sir or madam." This is informal. Let's take down the hackles. Let's just be like these weird bags of cells in a room doing whatever bags of cells in a room choose to do, I guess, Yeah. But there are a lot of folks, as I learned recently, who hate the y'all, who hate hearing people say y'all. And they're like, what like podunk performativity shit are you putting on? Like, you do not have a 10-gallon hat, sir. You have not roped a steer, madam. You need to go on with that, y'all. Right, and take your hot dish and your casserole, both of them, right away. Like, I just did a couple different regions that probably use it. But they're all problematic. They are not problematic, but they all have these like other codes in them that are like really difficult to identify because of how perfunctorily we use them all the time.
Yeah, I think like the issue with using phrases for synchronization is, one, you have to have a lot of emotional intelligence to be able to call on the right synchronization phrases. Like there are people I've worked with or been around in the past that are constantly trying to synchronize at 11, right? Like 11, like just extra, right? Like, let's go, like clapping, like we're going to do this and we're going to go. And it's like, I'm like almost never at an 11. Like I'm always at like a 6.
You're at an 8. You're always floating at a good. I'll give you 7 maybe.
What you perceive as an 8 is really like a 5 inside
That's
my
fair.
head.
That's fair.
So maybe I'm not right, but like when I say like let's fucking go is like a celebratory thing of like congratulations, like that's awesome. Is like sort of how I use it. But like if someone is trying to like synchronize me to like the clapping, like let's go coach type of thing, I'm like, absolutely not. I'm out. I'm not synchronizing with you at this speed. That is not my speed.
There's something really powerful about the desire to synchronize as well, because I find myself pausing, especially in the digital, like this hyper digital work context, of like I pause and I don't say anything at all because I feel like there's no way for me to pick the right thing. Like there's no way for me to not come off or signal something that was fully unintended, because my version of that would just be, that's awesome, congratulations. And then I immediately overthink it and I'm like, oh my God, I only put 3 words. That's not enough. Are they not going to think it's genuine? But if I write a lot, then it's going to seem like I took too much time on this one and not that one. And then I like think about this one. It's like, does this actually deserve that big of a response? Have enough people responded? Like, how about we just like get back to the fact that like we're happy about things and we care about people. And I'm using royal we. This is me. Thanks for coming to my therapy session with myself. I am both therapist and self. And I need to chill out. But Jess, I'm curious what's on your mind. How do you take this?
So there's like so many different pieces, because I think it took a second for me to get there, but like the premise of the conversation feels like it's how we try to insert other meaning into very like powerful everyday phrases, and maybe in certain moments of where having that attention to tone is important. Then Joey's bringing up this idea of synchronization, which is like, in what I'm understanding that to be, is where you're trying to just like get people either energized or like sort of bringing everybody to the same emotional level and like connecting on something. And I guess like all of these seem to be around what is from the originator. Like a person is trying to be a source of like positive something, whether they're trying to create a space of safety or trying to relax everybody or trying to be like, yay, we did it. But that there is sort of a miscommunication in some of the natural vernacular that we have, like the thing that you might say or you grew up saying when you're really excited about something may not be working, or like it might not be affecting the other person the way it would also affect you. Is this the right interpretation of what we're talking about?
Yeah. The thing within this is the message and the signal, and where those get confused. And this is something like I've heard Brits complain about before.
Yes.
When someone says like, have a good day.
Yes.
And you can say it in like the sweetest way and mean it as like, I hope you have a good day is like what the full phrase is, right? Like where it originates. But we do a lot of shortening. The abbreviation happens over time where it's like, you get what I mean. So instead of saying, I hope you have a nice day, Americans often just say, have a nice day. But then Brits get like, or I've heard many Brits get mad about it because it feels like a directive and like you're telling someone what to do. But it feels like it's like overly analyzing like a thing that doesn't really need to be analyzed, in the same way of like the hey chief thing. Like, I don't think anyone is actually at this point going into the thing of saying like, you're the boss and I'm not. And like, this is like a false like deference of power. They're actually just being like, hey chief, like it's like a phrase that actually has no literal meaning anymore.
I guess I don't know, like maybe there is though. Or like same thing with the phrase like good for you. Like saying good for you and meaning it in what good for you should mean. It's like, oh, good for you. But really what you're saying is like, good for you. Cool.
I love how different it can be to say good for you and that's good for you. That's good for you versus good for you. Like, it doesn't even need the tone difference and it still is like, But I think there is some like, I don't know if it's the memification of language or just the nature of language itself, that there's like condensed meaning that is built within the contexts that it's developed. And you're totally right. Like, it may never in the signal versus the message, the original signal may not have been intended to or loaded consciously with anything else. But the message can travel with these other things with, why did they choose that? Because like it does, like it strikes me when somebody, and maybe this is why those like stick out like a splinter in my brain. It's usually when those things come up, I wonder, it sparks for me a sense of, who do you think I am? Like, who do you think I am in relationship to you, that's the way that you would say hello to me? And it's always different. And it's not always frustrating, but it's always very curious. And like, this also happens a lot with Black folks. Like, we say hi in very different ways, I think, and I've experienced to each other, like in many instances. And there are just certain ways that people will say hi to me. And I see how, like, what of me they see in how they are saying hello to me that makes that feel more seen or invites me to engage in a way that I may not otherwise, because it's setting a tone, because there's another coded message in there. And in that case, it can be a code of safety in group. Like, I see you in a way that you are not regularly seen.
You know, that also made me think of when it has been taught to me since I was very little, but as a sign of deference to, say, a service worker or, you know, wait staff, you just address them by like sir or ma'am or madam, and I'll be like, thank you, ma'am. But I realized, like, something that I've been thinking about recently is like, there is a gender encoding inside of that acknowledgement, and like, even though it comes from a positive place, like all of the things that I think we're describing, they all come from like a positive intent. But what I think the point you're making, Aaron, is that like there's other stuff that may interfere with that message being received the way it is intended.
There will always be static in the signal, like no matter what we try to stop. And like the Brits, I think, is a really good one, because I've been read the riot act for saying like, hey, how's your day going? And just, or like being asked that and just responding with, good, how's yours? Or like, or how are you doing? That was what it was. Hey, how you doing? And it's like, oh, that was a question of like, no, for real. Like, I want to get to know you. It's not just a perfunctory, like, hey, how you doing? And I missed that signal, and I felt a little sheepish afterward. And then I was like, oh, I'm aware of a new context. I cannot traffic in it though.
I've had the reverse interaction where a Brit asked me, how are you doing? And I gave an honest answer, and he said, you're supposed to just say good.
See, none of these.
I like
try again.
I like the fuzziness of language though, because that's what like gives it like weird, your ability to like use it in unexpected ways, or like to use something like a phrase or something out of context to like make it funny or weird or whatever, where it's like, oh, you only say, like, only bodega guys say, hey, boss. And then you say it in a different context. And then it's like funny because it's I don't know. I'm being stupid.
No,
I think this brings us to Jess's. Oh, go ahead.
Before we go to Jess's wrap up corner, I think there is something to be said for the fact that like this, and you got to it. This represents both the awesomeness and limits of language. Like, unless we like were in the Matrix and we could like take a chip out of our brain or something and communicate everything with the exact fidelity and specificity and context into the other person by putting the chip in their head. I don't know what version of the Matrix this is. We like, without that, we're always going to have this gap between what we intend and what we say, and hear. Like, it's 3 different exercises that are always happening with so many different media, like, at the same time. And it's okay. Like, I think we have to remember, I find myself just like remembering good intent. So when I get riled up and I hear "let's go" and I'm just like gritting my teeth, I'm like, really? I'm going to let this get under my skin? Like, this is going to be the thing? How about the next time I get an email, just say, come on, something, and like call it a day, or just say, awesome, thanks. And know good intent when it's known, rather than questioning perfection or lack thereof. Did I accidentally Jess's recorder? I don't know what that was. No, Jess, you do it, because I don't think I did it. I just rambled a little bit.
I just, as an alternate version of my wrap-up corner, what I'd love is to give our listeners some replacement phrase to use instead of our own creation that we know, just us, is coded with a brilliant positivity, even if it means nothing to most people.
Palm tree avocado.
That's how you say hello.
That's how you say hello. That's it. Palm tree is a sign of welcome, and avocado is delicious.
Get your condiments.
Wait, it's a pineapple, not a palm tree. Great, even better. Get your condiments and mix it up, because pineapples are hospitality. You could, but I think palm tree avocado.
Get your condiments. So you can just if someone does something good, if someone says something good, you say get your condiments.
I really like this, and you know that people read into it. It's like, did I just make a great meal? So we're gonna eat it and just spice it up. Okay, cool. Go get your condiments. Go get your condiments. Yes, I like this.
Yep.
Listeners,
I'm going to use it now.
Make it happen.
Yeah,
I am
there
too.
you go. It'll only happen if you use it regularly.
Yes.
Yep.
So
Just like a condiment selection in your fridge. You should not keep those there unless you use them regularly. Is butter a condiment? I was just listening to this on another show.
No.
Is butter a condiment?
No. Ooh.
It can be.
Think about it on
corn.
corn.
It can be used as a condiment.
Is mayonnaise a condiment? Because if mayonnaise,
Yes.
as again discussed on the Judge John Hodgman podcast, they were like, but if mayonnaise is a condiment, like, isn't butter a condiment? Okay, well.
But I think it's like a state change,
right,
though. Like crab? Okay, no. Lobster, butter, lemon. Okay, fine.
Okay.
Hi. Buy Jess's condiments.com. The end. That was the ad.
Good ad.
That was the end.
Yeah. You may have these 30 seconds of silent fact because we had to buy it in the 30-second spot. And then explain this part. So it's probably more like 15 seconds. But the rest of the 15 is yours. So, y'all.
Hi.
I went home for the first time in a while because I don't know if you know there's a pandemic. We have to say that, I guess. I don't know if we have to say that.
Didn't even know.
But I hadn't been able to be home in a while, just between schedules and pandemic and some like other like medical things that kept interrupting it. Like I just wasn't able to see my siblings or my family for a while. And so I was able to go home this weekend, and it was like, outside of the pains of, doing 2 nights at my parents' house and like traveling 10-hour, 11-hour, 12 hours in a car in order to like make that trip happen. Outside of that part of the trip, it was a really great trip. Like my daughter hadn't seen my siblings since she was since last October, and a lot of things like change in that time. And what was surprising to me on this trip, and maybe it is just because we've been in this like COVID world longer now since last October when I last got to see my siblings, and like the tenor of the world was different at that point, and whatever, we'd only been in sort of like post lockdown in the US 6 months or something like that at that point. Now it's like 19 months or whatever. Was like having like a reflective moment where I was just like getting to be like really silly, and it was like in like not a self-congratulatory way, which I told y'all in the chat ahead of time. I was like, oh, like I'm funny. Not like haha funny telling jokes, just like I was having fun, and I was like getting to like tap into that like aspect of my personality that I don't normally get to tap into in all contexts. And I started thinking about the fact that like we're so many different people based on the context that we're in, right? Like you're a life partner, romantic partner, husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, or you know, you're an employee or a coworker, or you know, you're a friend, or you're, you know, like training with someone, you're a mentor, you're a coach. You can be like lots of different things, and those different contexts happen to different parts of your personality. And over the past year, because our socialization has been so limited, I realized like, oh, I'm not getting to be that like full spectrum of myself. You know, so much of my life has been like husband, dad, and like, you know, professional Joey, and a lot of like the friend Joey, sibling Joey, son Joey, like those things aren't getting to show up. And I was like, oh, I miss being this person. I haven't seen him in, you know, almost a year or like 9 months or something like that. And so as I was like taking a step back and reflecting on it, I wanted to ask y'all, what are the faces that we've lost in COVID?
Oh, okay. Hot take response. And then I'll maybe respond.
It's going to be a tepid take.
It's going to be a tepid take. I think my experience is that I gained fidelity in having one face rather than having to subdivide it into different audiences because of the pandemic. And so the experience of having to collapse home and work into my living space, that alone forced people into my life in a way that I'd been very comfortable creating a barrier and very safe behind that barrier. It disappeared overnight. It's been gone ever since. With even the line between, as we've talked about in episodes past, the line between friend and like professional contact had to evaporate because there was so much more room to emote and discuss the just insanity of the past year and a half. And I realized the benefits of no longer holding up those different things. And so while I still certainly modulate or you know, select, modulate's not the right word, select certain things that I will or won't talk about depending on who I'm with, I've felt a greater sense of consistency in myself and my expression over this time. And perhaps then even found like ways to appreciate who I was not allowing myself to be more often through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if I go to the we, because like it's a different lived experience, it doesn't mean that it's like right or wrong. It's just different. That it's interesting to me that you were able to actually see where the friend Joey or that family Joey hadn't had room to activate. And there are ways in which friend Aaron actually hasn't been activating because I moved across the country during a pandemic and to a place where I know 2 people. So like there is so many things that now the shorthand that I used to have is gone, that I have to sort of develop differently. And on top of that, I have to learn a new vocabulary and how to meet people. And as we just talked about, it's really hard to just say hello. It makes it very difficult meeting new people.
Yeah.
But I wonder, when you think about those different types of you that you've now started to reemerge or have started to reemerge, is there anything about the differences between them that that stand out to you? Do you wish that they were more, that you felt the freedom to be those different yous in more contexts more often?
Yeah, I think the friend or sibling, Joey or whatever, I think like the big distinction is like there's less expectations that come with that role, right? The like being a husband or a dad in like our current context of like not being able to leave home and do all those things. Like those roles already come with a lot of responsibility, but those responsibilities have increased. I think my professional self has like, the in quotes, like has like some of like being a boss, which comes with expectations of like how you aren't supposed to act, or like which aspects of vulnerability. And I think I push those boundaries, and still like there is sort of like an expectation. Even when you're pushing it, you can only sort of push those things so far without sort of like, making people not making people like uncomfortable, like socially or safety or things like that, but like being able to sort of, feel like the person is responsible enough to take care of things, or create a sense of safety in your job or things like that, like emotional safety of like, this person is going to make sure that we're able to get like checks paid. Not that I'm the person signing the checks, but you know what I mean? Like there's like an expectation that you're the, in quotes, like adult in the room or things like that. And I think what I was feeling like, I am still like the type of person who is like taking things on or trying to get things done when I'm at home. I'm definitely like, I went home and like fixed a bunch of things that just weren't getting finished at my parents' house, right? Like finished setting up like improved like Wi-Fi network that I got from my parents that they like didn't fully set up what they needed done, or like put together a grill, or like ordered something online that they were like, I was still taking care of those things, but like the expectation that I had to do them, or I had to do them in a certain way, or that I could like be weird about it or silly or like crack jokes, and like the moment didn't require a thing of me, and that sort of flexibility and freedom in a moment, I think was like really liberating. And that context dependent is, we like joked in the episode, we talked about like hallucinogenics and like the therapeutic effects of hallucinogenics. I had said like I could never do it around my wife because there's so much context that comes, not that she personally would be like, you can't do that or like put anything on it, but it's like I need to be like a husband to my wife and like a partner, and I'm like thinking about like my responsibilities as a partner, not that not in any like onerous way. It's just like, as a partner, you have responsibilities to like make sure your partner is like good and safe and like feels good or don't need anything. And maybe that is like me projecting my own sort of like cultural baggage on it. But I think those sort of like freedoms to like nothing's expected of me, all of a sudden I was like, oh, like this is nice. Like I don't need this all the time. Like I don't want to be in that role all the time. But like that flexibility to change faces based on context was like, oh, I miss this. I like realized as it was happening, like, oh, I don't get to do this and I miss it.
There's something interesting specifically in that moment of feeling free to be yourself and being free of that responsibility that feels very universal to me, of like what so many people went through this past year. Like there are a few good articles floating around about women who had kids, specifically women who had kids during the pandemic, and at the beginning of the pandemic in the US in particular, not being able to actually like, have that transition moment where people meet the child and like even when the parents can help take care of them on a regular basis because they're nearby. And so they had to truly do that huge transition during the pandemic. Or the people who literally like they went in with one kid and they came out with a second, and you all of a sudden have this mile marker of like people who knew you before and after that's dramatized or like exacerbated by how intense the job of parenting is during this pandemic. But a lot of the articles are really focused on this idea of how will those who knew me before and didn't see me during get to know the new me and how much I've changed during this period of time. And I think that the thing that's common about your story and those stories is that everyone took on more jobs during this pandemic than they could handle and then they knew how to handle. Whether that's, nurses and frontline healthcare workers taking on crazy shifts or like having the weight of that increase so much, or people at companies, especially during the beginning of the scariest part of the dip where everything was like chaos, and it's sort of like, all right, it's buckle up and show up and who knows what's going to happen next. Like there's this sense of impending doom that required everybody to take on more work. And it's only now that maybe we're starting to have some room, some of us are starting to have the room for that work to dissipate, that there are moments of, oh, right, this, I liken it less to context and more so like the happy me before the crazy times who could laugh at things more often and more easily, and that everything wasn't in the context of these huge seismic changes in the way that we live societally, whether it be like Haiti or Afghanistan or COVID or George Floyd, like pick your thing. It just feels like someone is shaking the table right now, and we're all figuring out how psychological security feels and flirting with it again. Maybe.
Yeah. There's something that I've been thinking a lot about. I saw it just like in a fleeting moment. I saw a tweet, and it's one of those things that like is a sleeper where you see something and the idea is there and you like read it and actually absorb it and you move on, and all of a sudden like the next day you're thinking about it again, and the next day you're thinking about it again. And it just said like there are two types of people who became nicer as a result of the pandemic and people who became meaner. And like what's the difference between those two types of people or something like that. And I was thinking about it of like, in this context, it's easy to imagine how like, if you were, for the sake of the argument, to pretend that is like a holistically true thing, like, the people being nicer could be about like needing socialization and being desperate for something, and people being meaner is like being put into those contexts like you're talking about that are just like making things so difficult, or potentially just like not getting to, the way that I was talking about of like put on one of your other faces, like as you were talking about it, for me, I was realizing like what about being with my siblings was so interesting, and is like the reality is like I probably was just playing more, because like it makes sense, like if you come from a bunch of like a family with a bunch of siblings and you play a lot, like when you're going into that social context, all of a sudden it's just we were just playing a lot and joking around and stuff like that, even just like verbally playing, right? And so like that maybe is just what I was getting. But like when you're reducing your social groups, you're reducing the number of contexts. And it's like that Esther Perel thing, right? Of like in monogamous relationships, like the way that Western societies orient towards monogamy is that they expect the monogamous partner to play all roles for you.
Yes.
And even if you were in a relationship where you weren't doing that and you had other things, all of a sudden in the context of the pandemic, you got forced into it anyways if you were like not seeing anyone other than those partners or shrunken social groups.
It's so true. I'm trying to find the book and I won't be able to find it until after the podcast, but specifically this idea of being the fallacy of being able to be one person's everything and how that puts such like unreasonable
mating in captivity. Is that the one?
No, it's about maintaining a healthy polygamous relationship, and I cannot remember it, and this is going to be terrible. It will come to me. It's in its like 7th edition. It's the sort of seminal one from the 70s that gets revised every couple of years. But the other thing, I mean, is, and this sort of leapfrogs back to the point you made just before that, which is this idea, this fundamental belief and idea that getting back together is good, and that everyone was worse off by being more alone. And it stands to reason. We're social creatures. Like, we need other humans. That's just a part of who and what we are. But there are also so many people who experienced a better life by not having the same style of interaction with people. And I think the New York Times did a fantastic piece. It may have been as far back as March, but it was a quick, micro doc where they interviewed 3 or 4 different people that didn't have to deal. For example, one woman is in a wheelchair and she didn't have to deal with an entire world that is not built for her. And she doesn't have to deal with how difficult that is to get into those different spaces physically. And then others just not questioning certain people's worth in certain contexts, and instead really looking at the value of their perspective, their opinion, and what they offer. And I think it's kind of difficult. Like, I guess it's just difficult, the fact that like different people are experiencing this pandemic and this sort of like liminal space between normalcy and not, in really wildly different ways. And I for one will say, like, I miss hanging out. I still, whatever version we had of before, being able to just feel like you could get a drink with someone and it just be about, it's more about like, what are we going to talk about? Or I haven't seen this person in a long time, as opposed to what are the restrictions? Do I have my virtual passport ready? Is it available on Android? Like, everything is harder than it was before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
our
I
faces,
think
our faces deserve face touch-ups. Metaphor fell apart.
I think I framed this question ultimately in like what faces did we lose through the lens of like me mourning some things as a result of this, but I think it's equally fair like for those to, others to be able to say like, what have I gained by only wearing one face, which I think brings us to Jess's mannequin head corner.
For better or worse,
it's terrible.
During the pandemic, we've occupied fewer roles more intensely than before. I think that probably is universally true. And it is interesting to hear a few different angles, like you're saying, Joey, of how that could be freeing for some, but also suffocating for others. And either way, the adjustment or rediscovery of some of those roles that you used to play and trying them on again and being like, oh, this is so interesting, is a transitional process. It takes me back to that time we were talking about our framework for what summer was going to be like. And then I don't even know where that stands. Maybe this in some ways starts to revisit that again, of what that transition is looking like, but also in stops and starts. But I'm really glad at the end of the day, Joey, that you got to see playful Joey. That's really nice.
There he was. 7 years old, all over again.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by the Man in the Iron Mask, the face that keeps on giving. Ooh, ow, ee, hoo.
As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and the face that launched 1,000 ships, Jess Vander.
We'd also like to thank sound engineer and g'day, mate, Alex Contel.
We'd like to thank programming coordinator and babyface Les Jacobs.
Amen to that. And you know what? Sarah Gilbert, Norm Estridge, thank you for your production help, friends. Appreciate it.
And as always, thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
Special thanks.
Not my Crocodile Dundee bad Australian accent. It doesn't get it. Oof. And it slipped to Australia or New Zealand.
It was kind of good.
What a little Kiwi. No. There we go. It was in there. No.
Nailed it.
Thanks.
Sorry, Terry, if by chance you listen to this.
Again.
Again.
Yes. Yeah. Special thanks to siblings, I guess. That's how I'm feeling that way right now. Those big dumb idiots.
Amen to that. Oh, it was really nice being with my brother last week. That part was good. Also want to thank The Ethical Slut, A Practical Guide to Polyamory, which is the book that I couldn't remember the name of in the last segment by Dosey Easton and Janet Hardy. It's a good read. It will open your mind to just like, oh, there are other ways that people think about things. Huh. So definitely worth a read. Yeah.
I'd like to thank broccoli for being a hearty vegetable.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Bissell. Okay. Bissell makes this thing called, I think it's called a spot bot or a pet bot. And like my dog got sick. And so I used it and it worked really, really well. And thank you to Chloe as well from our team for recommending it, because literally heard about it on Wednesday, bought it on Friday. Everything's better.
Everything is better.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Aaron, for your glowing visage.
Listen, same to you.
Thank
too,
you,
my
Jess,
friend.
for yours too.
Bye, Jess.
Spring 22.
Yes.
Spring 22. It's popping off. We can just tell ourselves that right now in case it does. And if it doesn't, we can give ourselves a fake light at the end of the tunnel. You know?
I like that.
To get to mile marker 247.
Jennifer Hudson's been singing about it for years. And it was a really bad allusion to her song Spotlight. I think it's time for me to go. I think we gotta go.
Yeah, I think we should go. We're thankful. We have gratitude, and we're going. Okay,
and there
goodbye.
it is. Okay, goodbye, friends. Bye.
I like this. The rest of the show is just silent, Joey. Just silented.
And I'm back.
Nope.
Nope. Silent Joey interpretations.
Just a muty Joey.
Nope.
Just
Still can't hear
muted.
him.
None of it.